with the cervical spine or also the neck. The type of joint that it mostly is a gliding or a planar, and in the sagittal plane, movements occur with flexion and extension. In the frontal plane, left lateral flexion, right lateral flexion, or left side bending and right side bending. And the transverse plane, right rotation and left rotation. With the thoracic / lumbar spine, the spinal movements usually occur with the type of joints that are gliding or planar. In the sagittal plane, the movement that occurs is flexion, extension. In the frontal plane, left lateral flexion, right lateral flexion, or left side bending and right side bending. And in the transverse plane, right rotation. No, this is left rotation? I don't know. And right rotation and then left rotation. I believe so. Next region we're talking about is the shoulder or glenohumeral area. The joint type is a ball and socket, also known as a spheroid joint. The movement that occurs in this joint is flexion, extension. That is in the sagittal plane. In the frontal plane, we got abduction, adduction, medial / internal rotation, external rotation / lateral rotation. In the transverse plane, we have horizontal adduction and we have horizontal abduction in the transverse plane. And in the multiplanar with movement, we have circumduction. Next type of joint we have is the elbow joint region, or the humeral ulnar joint. It is a hinge joint, also known as a ganglionoid joint. And the only movement that happens, this is flexion and extension in the sagittal plane. The next joint type we have is the radial ulnar joint, or your forearm joint. It is a pivot joint, also known as a trochoid joint. The movement that happens is pronation and supination. And in the plane that it occurs in is in the transverse plane with pronation and supination. The next region we have is the wrist region, or the radiocarpal region. The joint type this is a condyloid joint, also known as an ellipsoid joint. Movement that occurs in this is flexion, extension, ulnar deviation towards the ulnar, and radial deviation towards the radius. And those occur in the frontal plane. Flexion and extension occur in the sagittal plane. The type of region we are talking about are the fingers. Multitude of joints in this area. The joint type, condyloid, ellipsoid, hinge, or condyloid, also known as ellipsoid, and hinge, also known as ganglionoid. The movement that occurs is flexion, extension in the sagittal plane, and abduction and adduction, abduction, adduction in the frontal plane. The region we are talking about is the thumb region. The type of joint the thumb is a saddle joint, also known as a sellar joint. It is multiplanar, and the movement that occurs in this joint is in the multiplanar plane, which is opposition, just bringing your thumb like right across, and then reposition is bringing it back to starting point. So opposition right here, and then reposition coming back out. Next region we are talking about is the hip region. It is a ball and socket joint, also known as a spheroid joint. Movement that occurs with this joint is flexion and extension. In the sagittal plane, we got abduction and we got adduction. In the frontal plane, in the transverse plane, we have medial rotation, also known as internal rotation. We have lateral rotation, also known as external rotation in the transverse plane, and multiplanar movement it has is circumduction with that. Next region we are talking about is the knee, and the type of joint it is a hinge joint, also known as a ganglionoid joint. And the only movement that occurs in This joint is knee flexion and knee extension, and those occur in the sagittal plane. The region that we have is the ankle region. It is a hinge joint, also known as the ginglymoid joint, also known as a gliding joint, that is also known as a plantar joint. Movements that occur is, I could be right, plantar flexion, where you go like planting down with your ankle. Dorsiflexion, bringing your foot up. That occurs in the sagittal plane. In the frontal plane, the movement that occurs is inversion and eversion of the ankle. Like bringing it in is inversion, out is eversion. Some multiplanar movements involve it being supinated or supination of the ankle. That is when you're rolling your ankle outward. Would not recommend. And pronating it would be rolling it inward. Would not recommend that either. Now we are talking about the toes. There are a multitude of joints in this region. The type of joints the toes are condyloid, also known as ellipsoid, and they are hinge joints, also known as ginglymoid joints. Movement that occurs with the toes are flexion, kind of like balling your toes up, and extension. Bad balance. That occurs in the sagittal plane, as well as spreading them out. Abduction, and then bringing them back together is adduction, and that occurs in the frontal plane. Now we are talking about the shoulder girdle or the scapular region. Movements that occur in this is elevation, depression, protraction, and retraction. The final joint region we're talking about is the mandibular region, also known as the jaw. Movements that occur with this joint: depression, I just bring the jaw down. Elevation, bring the jaw up. Protraction, bringing it forward. And retraction, bringing it backwards. Bad TMG. But that has been all. Hope you enjoyed.